You need to call the meeting.
Oh, call the meeting to order.
Do a roll call.
I'm sorry?
That would be very helpful, wouldn't it?
Okay, let me look at the list. I need a list. Oh,
It's on the meeting minutes.
yeah, let me get to the
It's at the
meeting
end,
minutes. It's at
sorry.
the end, that's okay. All right. Pat Tompkins is going to be late. Nancy Toomey here. John Coote.
I'm here.
Greg Stepler. Greg,
Oh, oh,
Muted.
sorry, gotta unmute you. Greg. We'll come back to him. Kirk McCormick. Nancy Zimlak. Here. Mark Doxer.
Here.
Michael Nazaro.
Here.
Ari Greenberg.
Here.
Greg, are you here?
Yeah, you guys were muted when you came on. I didn't hear your call. My name.
Yeah, no problem. Meetings to order. Okay, thank you, everybody.
right, do you want to take over then?
Sure.
The next step.
So hello everyone. We've got a lot ahead of us tonight. There's been a tremendous amount of activity since we last met. So we're going to try to bring everyone up to speed. Lots of information, and I think we'll just want to dive right in. So first off, we just want to have a quick update from the select board. Probably a lot of you know what happened at the last meeting. But Mark, maybe you can just fill us in on what they decided and how we're moving forward.
The Select Board voted 5-0 in favor of Simon's Way as the site and to move ahead with this phase of the design. So that's where it was. So it was a unanimous vote. Everyone seemed strongly in favor, and time to rock and roll.
Sounds great.
Good, so we've been moving forward very quickly. First item on the agenda is we want to get some approvals for invoices. So Jenna, maybe you can pull up that from the meeting packet. So we have 3 invoices up for approval. We have 2 from BH+A and 1 from Turner Townsend Heery. The first invoice from BH+A, invoice number 27208, was for $8,000. That was their work that was done in October. Then we have one for $20,000, which is their November work. That also included the geotech report, which is part of their contract. That was also included in your packet. And that'll be used to help the schematic design we go forward to know what the ground conditions are.
That's great.
And then we have an invoice from Turner Townsend Heery. It's one invoice that's actually for 2 months for $23,950. So we want.
We'll need a vote to approve.
Yes, and also if you could scroll down, down a little further. So here you can see kind of where we are to date. I'll continue to provide regular financial updates. I have the information for the OPM and the architect, but I'm also getting some additional information kind of for the whole project from the town. So I should have that at the next meeting. So BH+A is billed so far 18% for the schematic design phase, 47% for their total contract. And Turner Townsend Heery is at 24% for their contract.
Great. So we need a motion.
Is there any discussion on the invoices as submitted? Yes.
Just a quick question. Does, under OPM budget, does 6% unencumbered? Can you just tell us what that is?
So the amount that was set aside was $100,000. The fee that was negotiated with Turner Townsend Heery was less than that. So that's what it is.
Thank you.
Yeah, great. Always less is good. We need a motion to approve if there's no more discussion on the individual. We should do it one at a time. Can we do all 3 at once?
I think.
Motion to approve the 3 invoices as submitted.
Second.
All those in favor? I should go through the list. Hold on, let me get my cheat sheet again. Let's see, I should keep this one open, Jenna, I don't know. All right. Pat is not here. John Coote,
Yes.
Greg Stepler,
Yes.
Kirk McCormick,
Yes.
Nancy Zimlak,
Yes.
Mark Doxer,
Yes.
Nancy Toomey, yes. Hello.
And Matt just joined.
Yeah, Matt. Matt Cornelis just joined our meeting. Great, thank you, Matt.
Yes.
Welcome. All right.
Okay, next item is an update on the schedule. So this was included in your packet. The schedule is more or less the same as far as the general timelines go, but there's been a lot of detail that's been added relative to meetings from working groups, upcoming building committee meetings and so forth. So I don't want to spend much time going over it, but you can look at that in more detail. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. And I've also condensed it too, so the tasks that were done in the past, those have all been rolled up, so it's just easier to look at. And it's only 3 pages now.
Great.
And like I said, we have been very busy the last month, so we are tracking where we need to be for our current schedule. As we've talked about before, the schematic design phase is pretty tight, but we do feel there's sufficient time to get the work done. And what I want to emphasize with that is that what we're really looking to do is figure out the overall building configuration and the cost. And that information will then go to the town for approval. But after that, the design will still continue. So there'll be time during the design development phase to work out the details of various materials and selections. So this is just the earlier stage that we're focused on at this point. Are there any questions on the schedule?
Pat Tompkins has just joined the meeting.
Okay.
You can maintain the meeting. This is all you tonight.
Thank you, I'm so excited.
Should back a little lower.
So next we want to move into kind of the bulk of the meeting this evening, which is the updates from various working groups. And we'll begin with the communications. I definitely want to congratulate the communications working group on a tremendous amount of work within a very short time. We've had a ton of meetings, but they've also delivered with getting information out to the public, preparing for the upcoming public forum. And maybe I'll let Katie talk about all the activities that you guys have been working on this past few weeks.
Yeah, sure thing. Thank you, Brian. Jenna, is it okay if I share? I was gonna pull
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Let me just stop and I'll let you share.
Appreciate it.
No problem.
It's being as seamless as I'd like it to be. Thinking about it. Let's think about it. There we go. Hi, everyone. I'm Katie Gabriello. I'm the Director of Operations here for the town, and I'm the chair for our communications subgroup on the ReCal project. Like Brian said, we've been busy the last few weeks. We are a fairly newly formed subgroup. I think we've met 2 or 3 times at this point, but we're working on our public communication around everything having to do with the Reading Center for Active Living project. We've started populating the website here for the project, so you'll see it lives on the town's webpage. We're working on kind of highlighting its visibility a little bit, so it can be easily found by folks who are looking for information on the project. Right now, it lives under departments. It lives under the Elder Services subpage under Public Services. We're planning on bumping it up so it has a more prominent location, so it'll be right here on the top navigation, so folks will easily be able to find it. We're also planning on highlighting this website via a news flash. So if you're familiar with the town's website, we have scrolling news updates and news flashes that live right on the town page. We're able to bump those up and down at will, depending on what a priority might be at any given time. Our goal here, as we continue to populate the website, as we host the community meetings, and as we're pushing more information out, will be to have a tile right on the homepage that promotes ReCal, so folks know that there's an easy way for them to go and find all the information they're looking for at any given time. So just walking through this website really quick, we're hoping that this will serve as the hub for everything you're looking for. So previously we had ReCalc, the Reading Center for Active Living Committee, they had their own page here, and over on this left-hand navigation, you'll see that that page in its entirety has kind of migrated over to this larger hub. There's so much amazing work that was done for ReCalc, the studies, all of the various research projects, all of the various evaluations of site, et cetera, that we definitely want to make sure that that is super easy for folks to find so they can see all the historical work that's been done, and that's still, easy to access here. And then we've been working as a group to kind of figure out, from a navigation standpoint, what are the pieces of interest here? So you'll see we have an FAQ published, we have a project timeline, we have the community needs assessment highlighted. So we pulled a few things that we thought were of particularly high interest here, so people could come and easily find what they might be looking for. We're using this homepage as kind of, this is the center location. Come here to see what we're talking about. We're highlighting upcoming public forums. We have some photos of the current Pleasant Street Center, just highlighting, some of the deficiencies are certainly in here. You can see how crowded it is. You can see the small spaces, but you can also see what an engaging place it is that we're hoping that we can, expand upon in this new project. It's certainly a work in progress. We're open to any and all feedback that anyone might have, and we haven't really been publicizing it too much yet as we're kind of working the kinks out, but it has been published, it is live on the website, and we're proud of the work we're doing here, and we're looking forward to continuing to iterate here so it will become an easy one-stop shop for folks who are hopefully, as they are looking to learn more about the project.
Great.
Does anyone have any questions about the website? And what's the best way to provide feedback? If members have comments?
Good question. They can come to me
Yeah.
directly
In the email that
in
you're
the
gonna
email.
do?
Oh, and our new email, what is it? It's recal@readingma.gov. So we've also, thank you for pointing that out. We have a dedicated email address that will be prominently featured on the website and will allow anyone from board members to residents who have any feedback or are looking for any specific information. And that goes to an alias, that goes to a group of folks for full visibility, so we can answer any questions anyone might have. But yeah, any feedback, much appreciated. And then I was also going to highlight a few of the assets we've been working on. So as everyone here probably knows, we have a community forum coming up on December 17th. It will be over at the Pleasant Street Center. I believe we have an hour scheduled for tours of the building, followed by a public forum where folks who are interested can be brought up to speed on the current status of the project. We're thinking about the best way to engage with those folks who do attend, both during and after the event, and to that end, we're working on a flyer here that, can I figure out how to switch what screen I'm sharing? Maybe, it's a maybe. So we'll have kind of a compelling lead behind.
Flyer in their packets too.
Yeah.
I know, it's in you have the flyer in your packet, so we'll just pull that up real quick here. Still, it lives in Canva right now, but just trying to highlight a combination of both what the vision is for this project and also, oh, it's page 6. Sorry, I'm on the wrong version. We're doing some version controls, but it's certainly a work in progress. So you can see kind of the timeline. We're talking about the needs assessment. We're talking about the work that has gone into it from a collaborative perspective around site selection, being starting to highlight how many groups have voted and how much work has gone in and how thoughtful the process has been to date, along with the current mission and vision statement, a sampling of frequently asked questions, some timeline information. So we'll have this printed out for folks to take with them after they leave the meeting. You'll also see it on social media. You'll also see it on the website. So really working on that consistency of messaging and just reiterating, all of the work that has happened so far, the goal of the project, and how we're planning on getting there.
Katie, is the email address, is that on the website yet?
I don't think it's on the website. I think the email address is hot off the presses. We
Okay.
just had our friends at IT create that.
Okay, awesome, but that will be on there.
That will be on
Okay, so
there, for
people
sure.
can access that.
And the cartoon and video.
Oh, yeah.
And the cartoon and video, yeah. We are engaging with a third-party contractor, Dave Cartoonin. If you've seen any of the videos that the town has put out for the Killam School project or the MBTA Communities project, we're engaging with that same video vendor. So he is like a master of his craft at making short, very to the point, very clear, short video content, basically. He operates on a pillar model that kind of the videos and the messages build on top of one another, but it's really short, easy to digest content, and he's working on the first one right now, which is a mix of the need for the new center, the vision, and kind of how the process has gone so far. So he's working on that actually right at the moment. We're planning on having the world premiere of that at the start of the public forum on the 17th. And then that's another thing that you'll see on the website, you'll see on the town social media. Hopefully, you all will see it and love it and want to share it out also with your family and friends. But we're really looking forward to that. That should be a really nice asset that just kind of pulls everything together with really nice graphics. He is a former news on-air personality, so he has a great voice for it, and it'll be a really nice asset once we have it. And I think that'll be the first of several that we're commissioning with him.
Where do you anticipate this being available to people? I've never seen the Killam ones, by the way. I'm on the Killam School Committee, but I've never watched the Killam ones because I don't know where they are.
Sure, so the Killam ones in particular, those are on the Killam website. We featured them all on the town's website, and I know for our planning department, theirs live on their various page, but for this one, you'll certainly see it on the homepage of the Red Ant site, you'll see it on the Recal site, and then we will share like gangbusters all over social media.
One of the problems is some of these things you have to search for them to find them, and you have to be committed to searching. They don't just pop up like an advertisement should, annoyingly.
I mean, how annoying do you want us to be, John?
Well, that's the question. That's the whole theme of my question. How annoying should you be in terms of getting, when people open Reading Town of Reading website, should they immediately get a flash of Recal or Killam School or something like that?
We do embed them on the website. We do embed them on the website. We have shared them with RCTV. I think RCTV has a Killam, what did you call it? Playlist.
Mm-hmm.
So we give the collateral, we share the collateral out, and we also put out that information with press releases from time to time. And we put it on Facebook. So, and we can put it on Instagram, and I know you're on Twitter, John.
LinkedIn too.
And LinkedIn. I know. We put it on, LinkedIn
socials.
actually gets a decent amount of traction.
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, it's very difficult to get something pop up automatically without being annoying, as you rightly said.
Sure, there is a certain opt-in element of it for folks who follow the town on social media or for folks who have signed up for alerts about building projects, etc. It's certainly something, I know we've talked about the website in terms of, is it a banner? Is there something that you have, like the school does this, you might notice. Sometimes if you go to the school's, the district website, they might put a notice up that you have to click OK to then get to the rest of the site. It's certainly something we can look into, John.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because, in town, like any town, there are, 10% of the people are interested in the town.
Sure.
90% couldn't care less whether they live in Reading or Wakefield or Stoneham or where it is, they're just here. And they never search these things. How do you get to those people? Tough, huh?
Yes.
So one of the things that the communications group has done is put together a list of the communications channels. So when we have information that's going to be disseminated, it goes to 31 different addresses. Some of those are individuals that are connected within the community. There are, I think, 7 different town groups and 6 different media channels, as well as like the Select Board, Elderly Services, Recreation, Veteran Services, Council on Aging. So when something is created by the communications group, it'll automatically get sent out to all of those. So we're always looking, I guess, for new suggestions and how to reach people, because you're right, that's a tricky thing. People are busy and sometimes their attention is elsewhere. Most of the time,
Plain
probably.
can go to town with a banner behind it.
I like that, that's a good
How's the
idea.
budget look for that? Pretty good?
That's not a good
I think you gotta volunteer.
We're always open to new things. We always add more people or groups to that same distribution list. Josh maintains that list. So that's always of interest. We can put them on the message boards when people come in. We put it in the Town Manager Minute. A lot of people subscribe to the Town Manager Minute. It's a great way to find things, and they click through and watch the video.
Free bandanas for dog walkers. Every dog gets a bandana around its neck, which says Recal.
So you want some merch. John wants some merch.
One good way to get it out there too is to put the link in a QR code and just paste that all over town. It's
Yeah,
a
that's a
good way
good
to get
idea.
people to open their phones, watch the video, and at least know that this exists.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. We love a QR code.
Yeah, I think right now the plan is to put that front and center on the website, right? So when you click on the QR code, it takes you to the website. That's the first thing that you'll see.
Yeah, and the videos on the website. So
Yeah.
Yeah, and the video will also be featured on the homepage of the website, so we'll have a time where we'll have Recal doing double duty as, here's kind of the general post that if you're looking for it, you can see it, and then the video will get its own standalone to really try to drive traffic there.
Great.
And then a few other things I think that you guys put together was, there was a press release that went out. And the forum notice. So that also went out to all those channels to try to get people aware that we do have this public forum coming up next week and invite the public to come participate in that.
Yes, and within that press release, I believe we mentioned additional forums that are being scheduled that will be sharing the dates and information, so folks are aware that this isn't something that's happening in a vacuum. It's not a one and done, it's an ongoing educational series, so people can hear more about the project. And we also, for the press release, we centered the select board's vote on the site selection. So that was kind of, the tent pole there, that we have a site, it has been unanimously voted on by several different groups, and we're having this forum, so it was really jam-packed with all sorts of good retail stuff.
Mention RNN or not? No.
So I hope all of you can attend the public forum next week. So as we already mentioned, that will be on Tuesday at 6 o'clock. We'll start with some tours of the existing Pleasant Street Center, and then the forum will start at 7. And I think there's going to be some refreshments too, is that right?
So I'm told.
Food and
Oh,
refreshments.
Okay.
Wait,
Dinner.
what kind of food are we talking about?
Steak
Wraps.
dinners, I think.
Oh,
Yeah, steak.
like an actual meal type refreshment.
Yes.
Wow.
It's important,
Wow.
it's important for people like you that don't go home until 9, 10 o'clock at
People
night.
come
I know, every night, yeah,
especially
exactly.
around dinner time.
Yeah, especially, that's great.
So it should be a great session. The goal of that public forum is really to bring everyone up to speed on what's been accomplished so far, how this building project fits into the town's overall plan, understanding the need for facility improvements, understanding, at least on a high level, how these project costs end up rolling into your taxes, right? So people can get a sense of what they're looking at with that. And then talking about the past work, we're going to have a little bit of a talk about what the Recalc committee did, just kind of on a high level, because they really accomplished a lot during their tenure, which was almost like a year, I think, right, that they were working on this? 2 years, okay. And then the bulk of the presentation will be about where the project is right now. So Joel and his team will kind of be going through what happened in the feasibility study, a little bit about the site selection, and then focusing on where we are now in schematic design, talking about the design process, about building planning and programming, all the considerations that are taken during that stage and how those come from various groups within the community. And then also talking about sustainability and site considerations, which are all part of the schematic design. After that, I think maybe Pat can wrap it up with just letting people know how they can get involved. Talk about what the Permanent Building Committee is doing. These meetings are televised. They're also recorded. They're available for later viewing. And then some of the website information that we already talked about tonight, how people can send in emails and stay connected.
Yeah.
And then we'll be there to answer questions and hear comments from the public and see how it moves forward. So a lot of stuff in 4 weeks. The communications group has been meeting weekly, plus there were additional meetings with the creating the vision and mission, updating that.
Yeah.
Also with the video consultant. So does anyone have questions about any of those matters or additional comments?
Comment, one of the things that we talked about in the communications meeting was how to share with the community how this committee manages projects, townwide projects, and how many buildings we're responsible for, the life expectancy of the buildings, and what that means in terms of expectations that projects need to take place on a regular basis. And the fact of the matter is the town has, I believe typically, but certainly recently, been managing multiple substantial projects at the same time. Most recently, 3. But I believe it's typically been a couple in the scheme of things. I think that as the community is learning about these priorities and to understand about projects and to understand the impact on their taxes, it's really important for them also to understand how projects get managed. And the notion that you can just do one and then you can wait 10 years and you can do another isn't factually correct. And in fact, it's problematic. And I think people need to understand that as part of their thinking process of deciding, how do I view this? And I think we, in the communications group, we agreed we try to just get a couple of kind of FAQs to get started, but it would be nice for the PBC, perhaps, or some piece of PBC to find a way to express this to the community. And I think it's really important for the school project. I think it's really important for the ReCal project. So I'm not sure how that would move forward from here, but.
Yeah.
I think we can do that. You mentioned managing multiple projects, and there's, building of the project and there's the paying for it. And, when you say managing, we're paying off multiple projects right now. But we've gone to school committee, FinCom, select board, and town meeting previously with feasibility, with assessments of the facilities, and communicated a little of the basic math of 20 projects. They last 50 years. Turn them over every 2.5 years. We haven't done anything in 10 years. Things look good right now, but things will be coming down the road. We've said that to everyone in the past, and we can. I feel comfortable saying that to everyone now. Obviously, I'd want to run everything by the full committee, so I'm speaking for the full committee. But I think we're fine with that message. That a little bit of like we need to be doing projects that upgrade our facilities, or in 10 years we're going to stack up 5 projects and have a problem. It's a very simple concept, and do it by square footage or by facility and how they turn over. So I think we can do that, and we can give a little bit of information on who we are as a committee, and what our role will be in managing the project, and hopefully giving the community a comfort. There was at least one project in town that didn't go well 20 years ago, and give the community a little bit of a comfort that hopefully the town's in a better position to manage projects while they're under construction than maybe they were 20 years ago, when there were 3 or 4 going on at a time, right? Barrows, Wood End, and the high school happening at the same time. So
there was a discussion also of possibly creating a heading on the town website that would talk about major projects. And something in there might be a way to take it kind of to the next level. So you talk to FinCom and select board and school committee and town meeting even, but to bring it to more of a community forum by putting it up on that page, it'd be major projects, and you could talk about ReCal and Killam School, and it may be that's a great place to have that expressed as well.
And we have a draft of that we're working on, exactly that, so.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for the forum, what we kind of talked about is, at the beginning, introducing some of these things, also talking about the facilities master plan. I think that's being set for next year, right? To go through all the facilities. So we could talk about it.
A year from July.
He was in the other room listening.
So, Joe, I think we're talking about the public forum.
Yep.
And in the beginning, maybe talking about some of this master planning that needs to be done for the town, and how that affects all the building projects, and how there are multiple projects that need to be done at different times. And then at the end, when we hear from the permanent building committee, kind of reiterating that, focused on the work of the permanent building committee. So you kind of get at the beginning and the end. So I think that would be really good.
okay.
Okay, anything else for communications?
Just great job.
Yeah, keep up the good work. It's great.
A lot of work in a short period of time.
And
It's very, very
Got a good
impressive.
team.
Yeah, for sure. And I'd be remiss if I didn't recognize the operations executive assistant, Joshua Dalon. He's been here for less than 2 months at this point, but he's jumped in, and most of the grasshopper you're seeing is coming from him. So, thank you, Joshua.
Nice job.
Welcome.
Okay, next, we want to focus on the work of the Sustainability Working Group. So they've had one meeting so far, and I think we have not yet had a chance to appoint a chair or a point person for that working group. So I was wondering if there was someone that wanted to volunteer that was on that working group to be a point person for the Sustainability Group.
I can be a point person for it, but that would mean that we need to reschedule that meeting so that I can attend it. So if we can solve that scheduling conflict, that would be that person.
Okay.
I would second Ari. I would nominate
I'm
Ari.
a squeaky wheel for that topic, so I'm happy to take that
That'd be great. That would be great.
So, Joel, that was, coordinated with your team. Do you feel like you can go on a different day? So I don't know what your calendar is. So right now it's what, Tuesday?
That was my mistake for saying I was available the first time around when it turns out I wasn't, so apologies for that.
I don't know what the alternate date was. Do we have an
Do we
alternate
have an
date?
alternate time or date that works best for you, Ari?
It was like, we're doing Tuesdays from 1 to 2. I think I can, even just an hour later. Ends up working for me, I believe.
That's okay.
Is that good? Tuesdays, 2 to 3?
Yes, sorry.
Oh, yeah, okay, great. Thought you were checking. Yeah,
Perfect.
Tuesdays, 2 to 3.
Okay.
Perfect.
And we're every other Tuesday. So.
Yes.
Great.
Make the change, and then we can update that meeting invitation. Okay, and also before we get into the nitty-gritty of the sustainability work, there was a request to add another member. I think, Nancy, you had someone in mind.
Oh, yes, one of the Council on Aging members. His name is John, and I always mess up his last name. SCAYZSKI. And there's some more letters in there. I'll get it for you. He had volunteered way back, and I was remiss in not sending his name to you all sooner. But if there's room, he would be interested.
I think that makes sense, if he can make the date and time.
Okay.
I'm not gonna reschedule.
What is his background, do you know?
He is an engineer.
Okay.
So, but the details.
Because it's a technical committee,
Yes,
so.
yes, and that's, his background is in that field somewhere.
Okay.
So, can you forward his
Yes.
name and email address, and want you to send that to your team to add him to the
Joel.
list?
Okay.
Okay. All right, so the Sustainability Working Group had one meeting so far, and BH+A provided a great presentation, kind of giving the overview of sustainability, what are the code requirements, how energy and carbon can be addressed, looking at structural ways of dealing with some of those things, mechanical ways, and ultimately setting goals for the project. So the presentation was in your package, but I would ask you, Joel, if you could kind of touch on, or Dan can maybe touch on some of the highlights of that, just to bring the full committee up to speed on what was reviewed and where we're going from here in regards to sustainability.
Dan, would you like to share your screen, or?
Yeah, that would be great,
Okay.
if I could. Thank
Yep,
you.
I'll stop sharing.
Good evening, members committee. My name's Dan Chen. I'm a principal with BH+A Architects. So if I could just quickly go through, as Brian has said, we met last Tuesday for our first meeting. And part of this is that we have a very similar sized project that are currently ongoing at Newton Senior Center, we call NewCal, and so and that's currently under construction. So there's a lot of lessons learned examples that we are bringing to this project. So for tonight, I think first and foremost is to understand from a sustainability as an overall umbrella, to understand the code requirements that's needed to meet that code, and then subsequently elective options of reducing building energy use, reducing embodied carbon, greenhouse gas. And then I'll cite some examples from Newton Center, Active Living, NewCal, and particularly focusing on two items, the building structural system considerations and then the mechanical systems. I'll go through these very quickly, of course, and then finally some takeaways. And because you have this in your packet, and I can, we have about, I have about 20 slides here, but the compliance pathway for Reading, as Reading's currently not an opt-in specialized code community, which means, but you are a stretch code community. What that means is essentially is there's a base energy code, there's a Massachusetts sort of additional layer of energy code that Reading is part of that. And then in the latest iteration of the energy code, as you may or may not have heard, some communities have opted into a furthermore stringent code mandate for their buildings. So as for today, the path to meet a building such as the ReCal being proposed is through a relative performance path. And what that means is that, and I'm going to jump to the next slide, is that there is there's a value in the code, and then you have to meet it. So it's a very simple concept. Those values are related to walls, roofs, floors, and so on. So components of the building, and then they are vertical what's called where the fenestrations, which in this case windows, and fixed and operables and so on. Rooftop solar readiness is a mandatory requirement in the new code. This may mean either a shared power purchase agreement with a third-party vendor, or you directly purchase the equipment on day one. So that's just what it needs to be done. So PV obviously is going to be an important element for this consideration. First and foremost, for building this is to reduce the carbon footprint and reduce energy usage. So you start with a base energy code. There's a stretch code, which Reading is a member or a community. Then you design the building to using the stretch code as a metric to see how far you can further reduce the energy use of the building. And finally, a highest energy alternative, which is how far, what is the farthest that you can push. And obviously here you may have heard words or terminology such as passive house, where zero energy or zero energy sort of terminology. These are my things that you've heard. But the goal here really is to trying to push that, reduce the energy use of this building being proposed. Some of the metrics that are, as a sort of overall umbrella, is the energy use intensity. This term may not sort of relevant from time, but really it's more of a benchmarking of all of these elements, energy performance, net zero, or embodied carbon life cycle analysis. All of these sort of flows into an index number, if you will, and that's kind of how I see it in that. And for a building of this size, and Joe's going to talk about the sort of size and the height, is probably looking at energy use intensity with a goal in the 30s, 30 mid-30s, and to sort of low 30s. Currently, the Newton Senior Center, or the Newton Center Active Living, we are achieving a EUI of 31. And that is a facility opening 84 hours a week. That's 7 days a week from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And that's a fairly ambitious energy target, and so that's something I believe that ReCal will also be able to sort of be in that category. In terms of energy use analysis in the building, you can see that as the sort of energy use reduces, the various components of that energy use, what makes up the energy use, becomes or changes. So, for example, in a baseline code, 60% of that is used for heating, whereas as you start to move the needle towards the more to reduce energy use, then the heating, cooling, ventilations, and electric lighting as well sort of start to equalize, becoming more equal share of that pie. Talk just a little bit about embodied carbon. Again, this is a very high level. And embodied carbon, as you know, is the greenhouse gas, the reduction of the greenhouse gas. And so in that respect, in the building construction, roughly 80% of that embodied carbon is in construction materials. And within that construction materials, roughly over 60% is in concrete and steel alone. And so in this case, what our goal really is trying to look at the materials, look at the environmental product declaration sheets that do come with some of these building materials, and understand sort of trying to reduce embodied carbon off this the footprint of the building. And there are sort of analyses that are done by third parties, such as a life cycle assessment that you can do to sort of understand sort of the precisely the footprint of what's being proposed. Building structure consideration, I'm going to just quickly go through. As I said, this is based on Newton Senior Center, NewCal, where we looked at all wood structure, and this is a 3-story building with a large gym program, not unsimilar to what's at ReCal. And so the advantage here is that here you have the lowest or the smallest carbon footprint with a wood building. Challenges here is that how do you have these clear spans of the gymnasium, for example, that needs to span at least 65 feet together with walking tracks suspended here. So and so those were some of the challenges, but often to overcome these challenges, we go to a glue laminated beams or a cross laminated timber decking system that, although it looks really beautiful, that you see some of the old gyms, they are expensive, and also and also the coordination with mechanical systems requires very careful sort of thought, because these beams you can't just punch through them very easily. We also looked at a steel structure versus and a wood structure. What I mean by that is that the entire gym portion is out of steel, because steel gives you the flexibility. The steel truss allows you for the long spans, or the larger spans, the clear spans, I should say, whereas the rest of the senior programming are with wood. And the consideration here is that you need to be careful, or we need to pay careful attention between effectively 2 different building types, so they move differently, and therefore the control joints, expansion joints, and effectively the part where they touch each other becomes something that we need to pay careful attention to. And lastly, a hybrid version where you have the wood system or wood building and use metal span or steel trusses and beams to sort of span the long span. Although this may make sense on paper, there are a lot of complications, particularly given the public building environment, and also these connections where the steel and wood of the similar materials are fairly tricky. So it's also, it does pose some complications. And so ultimately the decision, at least for a NewCal in this case, was an all wood building structure with glue laminated and cross laminated timber decking for the gymnasium. mechanical system considerations, and this again is a very large component in terms of looking at buildings, VRF system, and what's all presented here are all electrified building systems. So there's no fossil fuel, no natural gas in these mechanical systems. You may not be, or you may have heard of a variable refrigerant flow, which is an air source heat pump system that effectively has sort of a fairly low first cost, very efficient, it's simple, and the relatively low maintenance cost, and that sort of then increases as as the system becomes more complex. Finally, with a geothermal system that ultimately requires further much more sort of involvement in terms of first cost. And I know that during the presentation with the workshop that there are currently plans of phasing out of the R410 refrigerant, R410A refrigerant that's used in these high pressure systems. And so we are looking into that and to come up with sort of understanding and in terms of what that impact means to a VRF system. So relative first cost of VRF is a fairly low cost, and that goes all the way up to a heat pump, or sorry, to a geothermal system that effectively are drilling hose down to the ground fairly deep, but because the ground temperature are much more stable than the outdoor temperature, heat pump works on extracting heat out of the temperature differential between the inside and where of the temperature differential of the outside air. So when the outside air is 5 degrees versus a 50-degree constant temperature in the ground, that's a very big difference. These numbers are somewhat old. These were done for Newton Senior Center. These were done back in, at least the initial studies were done in 2020. So I believe the cost for geothermal has gone up pretty significantly. And then the last two slides, one is the envelope and structure. As in any building, the two things we found that was makes a significant impact to the building, energy efficiency and conservation is the insulation and the air infiltration in terms of how air comes in. If insulation as in adding, whether it's achieving a certain R value on the roofs, on the walls, on the foundations, and then air infiltration is how tight the building is in terms of the air coming in to the building. And lastly, some takeaways. We always look at sort of reducing the building energy demand. In this case, establishing a realistic energy use intensity. As I said in the beginning, I think this building you can look at in the ballpark as 30, 35, or potentially going down to the low 30s and in the high 90, in the high 20s. Harvest high energy or explore PV panels, and as well as looking at the ground source heat pumps system and with a cost benefit analysis given the expense of the system. Maximize building efficiency through installation, air tightness of the building, looking at sort of the best and the highest efficient HVAC system. Of course, again, back with cost analysis in terms of pros and cons. And then energy modeling is part of all of this. It's essentially tracking the as we design, as the building change shape, as the building sort of takes different materials, studying different materials, all of that have impact relative to the energy efficiency and conservation of the building, and minimizing carbon footprint. And in this case, essentially looking potentially at wood construction, which I believe this building or Recal is probably will be heading in that direction, given the height, the size of the building. And then minimizing or eliminate fossil fuel use, in this case, natural gas. And of course, in the next levels, looking at passive house standards, there's pros and cons, and a net zero or a net zero equivalent approach. And of course, all of this will involve funding, where the funding sources are, the IRAs, the local utility company rebates, and so on. So, with that,
thank you, Dan.
Could I chime in just for a second? I've got to leave and go to another meeting. So first of all, great. Second, do we have a connection, pardon the pun, to RMLD at this point? In other words, is there someone that's going to be consulting with us, kind of following progress and participating? If not, we probably should dig into that. Second is we just became a green community. And I would love to see several $100,000 of grant from there potentially come in our direction. And the third thing I was going to suggest, we should talk to Matt. I think maybe we can go after our state legislators a little bit. And see what's
Just a little
going
bit?
on. Yeah,
Yeah.
a little bit more.
A little bit more.
The IRA side is great, kind of unfed, but I wonder what might be possible on the state side also, as kind of a model.
There
See
are a
if
lot
there's an
of green
opportunity
communities
there
for
for us to, I mean, I think that's outside of the group a little bit, but I think we ought to go poke at these folks a little bit.
Yeah, and I think what you're getting at is cost, right? You know, how do we
Yes.
fund these, right? Because I think if the costs were the same, why wouldn't you do it? You know, ultimately, we're talking about two things. We're talking about investing upfront to have long-term savings. So whether that's improved windows or insulation or whatnot, you're paying more upfront to be able to save money in the long run. And the second thing is to do something that is good for the environment, it's good for the community, also in the long term, right? So we have that in all kinds of ways. Oftentimes, the cheapest is not the best. So those are the decisions that need to be made by this building committee and the direction that needs to be given to the designer about how we navigate those decisions. As we talk about the cost of the project, that can also be used to help people understand that when we're building a new facility, there will be some cost savings in terms of energy usage and maintenance. If the facility is larger, okay, you know, there might be more costs associated with that, but compared to the same size, you're going to be saving money on energy costs and on maintenance costs by having a new structure. So that's kind of built into that. So yeah, I'd like to, you know, have some discussion here with questions, a lot of information there. The sustainability working group is, you know, guiding through this, but it's really the whole building committee that needs to give direction to that working group on what the priorities are so that they know how to interface with the design team and, you know, what direction to be provided on a more regular basis. So what are the goals of this building committee in terms of sustainability for this project? How does that compare to goals for other building projects that you're doing? Mark just mentioned that Reading is a green community, so what does that mean to the town?
I would say from the building committee's standpoint, we I don't want to speak for everyone, but we take the approach that we want to build sustainably and responsibly. You know, we want to explore all aspects of all the systems. What's the initial impact? What's the long-term impact? What's the cost? And go through a full analysis of each system without, you know, results-driven process. We've got to go geothermal because that's what we have to do, or we have to have a gas-fired boiler because that's what we have to do, because we don't want to do any of that. We like to go through, I mean, obviously where there are, you know, the town has adopted the stretch code and adopted certain codes that we have to meet. But I think as a committee, we want to, you know, investigate and explore and make sure we're considering, you know, every aspect of it. What's the initial cost? What's the long-term cost? What's the maintenance of, you know, in an HVAC system? What's the maintenance? We had a long discussion on the Killam sustainability working group yesterday about redundancy of systems, also about the number of moving parts, and, you know, in maintenance. So I guess, you know, responsible, you know, sustainability is kind of where we would come at. We always want to look at it holistically and do the work of the engineering analysis.
I want to add to that because that's great context. For those involved in the Killam project, you're seeing this firsthand. But for those who haven't built a building in a couple of years, the current energy code is a pretty substantial shift compared to what you might be used to building even 5 years ago, in terms of what the code requires, and that's a good thing because it levels the playing field in some respect. A code compliant, it used to be, right, that a code compliant building is the worst building you could legally build, right?
Yeah.
The stretch code in Massachusetts is now so good that a code compliant building is a pretty damn good building from an energy perspective. And that lowers the delta between that building and the best possible building you can build, right? And so that does make some of those decisions a little bit easier to look at. So that's a big opportunity for us to explore some of those. It also, there's some unique opportunities there when talking about whether the building should run off of fossil fuels or only electricity or some combination of the two. It helps in that respect. Another thing that really helps is that we have cheap electricity in Reading, so it'll be cost effective to actually run a building that way. I love the idea of having conversations with the RMLD. I know they have good programs, and maybe there's an opportunity to see if they'll do something custom because it's a big enough project to consider that. I just wanted to, obviously I'm involved in the working group and we'll kind of get more into detail in that forum as well, but one, geothermal comes up all the time when we're talking about this, and I know it's on the slate for a heavy contender for Killam, but it's not necessarily the right option for every building, particularly because this isn't quite nearly as big of a building as Killam, and there are other options to do a really efficient building without geothermal. Probably the biggest reason to consider geothermal has to do with the tax incentives, the IRA incentives, and I know the town doesn't pay taxes, but the IRA allows us to benefit from it regardless. And so the thing that potentially gets unlocked with the geothermal system is that the incentive can actually potentially make the entire project cheaper to start with in some ways. So again, I can dive into that more. There's obviously some political liability with that about the survival rate of the IRA within the time span of this building being built, so that's something to consider. But again, all great topics. I think there's an enormous opportunity for us to design a really efficient building. A wood frame is an awesome, embodied carbon is massive and had been overlooked until very recently, so I'm glad that we're thinking about all those things.
Well, one more thing to add is that, there's nice ReCal vision statement that was put out. There's a ReCal guiding principles, and number 6 says the facility will be environmentally conscious, strive to be carbon neutral, and will leave a legacy of responsible design and operation. So that's what I think we need to stick with. So all of these things.
Yeah, so that's kind of what I'm hearing, from all these responses, that as a town, the town is willing to invest in creating a building that is going to be efficient and that is healthy for the environment. And if there's some additional upfront costs associated with that, that's something that would be part of the project. And I think your point about the building codes is very important, I think, for the general public to understand, because as we are constructing facilities today, they are more expensive, even adjusting for inflation, than they used to be. And part of that is because we are building better buildings that are more efficient, that use less energy, less fossil fuels, and have an overall long-term benefit to the community than buildings from the past. So again, when we look at project costs and all that, these are all the different factors that need to be understood, I think, when people look at why are we doing this, what is it going to cost? So we will continue to have meetings, bi-weekly with the sustainability group. Are there other comments or questions relating to sustainability or anything that Dan presented? There's a lot of some technical information there as well. Do people have questions about any of those things?
One factor with embodied carbon, which is not considered traditionally within the industry, is reusability of materials. Wood is about the worst material to build a building from if you want to worry about reusability, because there's nothing you can do with wood, a wood building, once it's reached the end of its life. You have to tear it down. You can't reuse the wood. When you build a metal building, metals are infinitely recyclable. Any metal, steel, aluminum, whatever it is, you melt them down and start again. You know, today's car body is tomorrow's rebar. Today's bow joist is tomorrow's some other rail steel. We haven't got in the industry, we haven't reached the point in the industry of worrying about, of figuring into that calculation of carbon efficiency the reusability of certain materials and the non-reusability of others. And right now it's fashionable to say wood is the most efficient building in terms of carbon content, carbon usage. My inclination is that sometime in the future the circle may come around. We may say, really metals are pretty damn good because you can reuse them. You don't have to go and cut down 1,000 trees to build a new building. You take an old building and you melt down the bar joists and you make new bar joists or something like that. The industry hasn't got to that stage yet. I think it will. What I'm saying is we should not drive wood as being the way to go if it's unnatural for the particular thing. Long span buildings of wood are not good. I mean, they're just not efficient in terms of first cost. A joist, a big joist spanning 60 feet is much more efficient in steel than it will ever be as a glulam member.
Yeah, so there are efficiencies for sure in spanning the long distances. I guess in terms of the embodied carbon and energy usage, that's a more complicated analysis, you know, to be able to understand the amount of energy that goes into whether it's recycling the steel, creating the steel in the first place. I don't personally have that data. I don't know when you had the information, the presentation, do you know if that was factored in? Or?
The industry doesn't have that information right now. And people are not thinking in those terms. I think they will in the future. But right now we're not thinking in those terms. What I'm suggesting is we should not drive to go to wood if it's not the natural thing to do for the particular design. I would never consider doing long spans in wood. I mean, it's just too inefficient, too costly, and you can't reuse the beams.
I think that goes a little bit to what I was saying, John. Like when we look at an HVAC system, the sustainability is one part of it. The having what we're going to maintain, having redundancy in the system in the event that one portion goes down and we're still able to maintain some heat. There are multiple factors, and in all the decisions we make, we want to do the work and look at all those things. Cost is one of them. It's not going to be the driver. We shouldn't be just taking the cheapest thing every time, and one factor shouldn't drive. And to John, I agree with John. I think that we'll find that other than the long spans, the building lends itself to a wood frame. But
yeah.
Joel will, and you'll opine on that when we get there. But we want to consider all factors.
Yeah.
My gut on what was up there was if I was at Newton, I just looking at that, I like the wood frame with the steel gym. I like that. I'm not afraid of expansion joint.
Nobody would consider building a warehouse out of wood. It's metal, most efficient, cheapest, and reusable. The gym has to be steel, as far as I'm concerned, because it's the most natural material that we have with today's technology for building. Even though its first carbon cost may be higher than wood, over the long period, when 50 years' time the building gets demolished and reused, you can reuse that steel. You can't reuse that wood, unfortunately. So that's a factor to be considered. So my advice is don't force yourself into an inefficient material, which is wood, for a long span condition when you have a good efficiency out of steel. got to have a mindset of doing what comes naturally, and steel is a natural material for long spans.
Do you have any feedback on that?
I think we should do the presentation because I maybe have some feedback, but I'm not going to argue about it because we're proposing to do a metal gym. I've been doing this for a long time, and the wood building's cheap, but it doesn't span a long span very easily. So,
Yeah.
I worked on a building which is at Boston College, which was a wood building with a long span, but it was a hyperbolic paraboloid. You know, you have to do those kinds of things in order to span 60, 70 feet with wood. You can't do this. It's you know, twisted roof or fancy stuff. Very expensive.
Yeah, I mean, there are some exceptions sometimes with like pole barns that were out of wood, like timber frame. And those can be recycled, but I hear what you're saying, and I think that I agree that the most cost-effective way to span a long distance is through steel. So Joel and his team will be taking those things into consideration. And did you indicate that right now, a steel gym seems to be?
well, our other cows that are of this size are wood framed, except for the gym,
Yeah.
for the most part, other than Newton, and that's the least expensive. It's the most highly efficient from an energy perspective because the wood walls are better than metal studs for insulation and that. So,
And you can run the mechanical through the trusses.
yeah.
Right,
So
yeah.
I think I have some questions about how to do the steel, which I'll get to in the presentation. I thought the PVC might be interested in.
Well, we have a lot of talented individuals here in the PBC, so
Yeah.
provide it. But
Well, I'm glad you said what you said, yes.
I apologize, I have to step out.
Okay.
Do we still have a quorum with him leaving?
Greg's online.
Greg's online, so we should, yeah. 2, 3.
Just checking.
All right.
Because Mark left too.
Right, we've got 5 out of the, how many do we have?
I was really anxious to have you at the presentation because of the cost section and the steel section to I mean, we can do it. It's going to take a long time to get there. I could talk offline about it with you.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
3, 4.
Thank you.
It's all good. We'll
So-
see you down there.
feel free to continue to provide information, send comments even between the meetings if people have something that is important that needs to be considered, and we can make sure that that goes through the point person in the working group. So if it's a sustainability comment or a question, it can go to Ari, who will then process that in the meetings with BH+A. And the same thing for the design and stakeholder working group. Or communications, right? So, we have these meetings monthly, getting the updates on everything that's been happening, but people might have ideas or questions throughout them. That's why we have those point people to kind of channel that information and keep it moving as we go. So, anything else that anyone wants to add or have a question before we move on? Okay. So the next item is just an update on the other working group, which is the design stakeholder working group. So they also have had one meeting so far. And we are looking for a point person or a chair for that group because we didn't have a chance to select one.
No.
I'll do it or Nancy.
Yeah, I can do it, that's fine.
Okay.
No, you can do it if you want.
No, I'd rather have you do it.
Sure, that's fine.
Okay,
If you
so
need me, I'm here.
Yeah, good.
they did
We'll meet.
have their first meeting, and once again, BH+A gave a great presentation focusing on just the overall design process, incorporating the vision and mission for RECAL and how that impacts the building program. They reviewed a number of design concepts, as well as looking at other Center for Active Living facilities, what works, what doesn't, and what the possibilities might be for Reading. And I think you also introduced some design concepts for specific spaces, material options, and so forth, but I'll let you pick up.
Should we go through the presentation, or
Maybe, I think you have some other slides as well,
well,
or not?
I can go through it quickly. One thing we don't like to do is have it online where someone comes on and doesn't get the whole picture. So there's slides here that PBC may not be interested in, but.
Okay, yeah. Just
So if we can
run through it.
just click through, that's the agenda, we don't need to hit. I just wanted to hit this slide for the stages that we've gone through. Some people have said, well, when are you going to do programming? So I wanted to remind folks that the first 3 months of ReCal for us was work sessions on what goes in the building, how big is it, and then stage 2 was where to build it. 3 was picking the preferred site of those things, and so we're at stage 4 now, which is a design phase. So programming, if I just in the schedule, you approved an invoice for November. We just got started a week before then, but we're going super fast. The goal is in December to get the design locked in, refine it with our engineers in January, and on the 15th of January, we're hoping to get it to the cost estimators. It's a crazy schedule. The reason being is that no one's ever mentioned cost tonight, other meetings, whatever. I'm sure there's going to be a big surprise when the cost estimate comes back, and we want to have a month and a half to sort of negotiate that process before we have to go public with a number. So the whole purpose of going in this speed is to not get to the end of it and go, oops, what do I do now? Let's be prepared. It's always going to be more expensive than folks want. So the schedule's been organized around that. Next. We don't need to see this, but it was great that we got the guiding principles and the vision that really supported the program. The program is from the feasibility study, but it's actually been updated as of last week. We made some refinements, and we're going to continue to make some refinements in the next slides. I'm sorry to have to say next.
No, it's okay.
This is a concept that we showed the design group. It's a wood frame building with a steel gym in Sandwich. Same sized project, but on the right side is the senior center. In the middle is a demising wall, and on the left side is the gym and the recreation department. It's a model that very similar to what's been talked about with a lot of the recount folks. At night, you don't go into the senior center. You can go in at 10 o'clock at night and play men's basketball, going in the B entry, and it's really successful to have that differentiation. The fact that it's combined is the seniors are in the gym playing pickleball and playing, walking around the track, and this sort of clear separation of the project has worked well for them, and we presented many different ways of doing it, and I think the design group liked this idea. And note the pickleball courts in front of it. It's pickleball rules the world these days, it appears. Going into the building, there's some key things that you have to identify that you think about as we go into the design. Greeting, signing in to the senior center, what's happening that day. So as we look at the design, I just have some images for folks to understand. This is Newton. You come into that building, you can see everything about the building from the door. The lounge cafe, the multipurpose room, the stairs to the program rooms upstairs, the sign-in, the elevator, on your right is the library and the front desk. That visibility is what makes the building work. The analogy we had was Duxbury is a 2-story building. They've renovated it because when it was 2 stories and they weren't connected, no one went to the second floor. So getting people upstairs, ReCal will be a 2-story building just by virtue of the site and the energy efficiency that you achieve out of a 2-story building. Next. So part of our work is to come up with a budget, and the budget involves finishes, and the finishes involve interior design. This is 10 years ago, Cohasset, very traditional, sort of where senior centers were traditionally. But next slide. The current model, this is Sudbury. People are thinking about it more as in a hospitality, cafe, a hotel, or something that doesn't have to do with elderly services, does not have to do with seniors, but has sort of a neutral connotation, and you'll have a senior lounge in the background, but in the foreground here you have the senior cafe that's on the street that carries you to all the program spaces, creates activity, creates that visibility. It's important to the design. Next. This is Westboro's design. Again, just showing you where things are migrating on the design front to a more economical, ecological light finishes, not your traditional heavy woods and that, but again, that sort of hospitality and very flexible model. Falmouth dispensed with their lobby completely and opted for a cafe. You come into the building, there's a corridor, it ends in the cafe feeds to the kitchen, which is the lower left. You can get your lunch, you can get your congregate meals, you can get your coffee. The kitchen also serves a multi-purpose room, but there's different ways to think about the use of space, and the great thing about working in this field is each town thinking about it the way they want to have their center work, and so it's not a cookie cutter solution. Next. These are just kitchen types. The left is a professional kitchen, the right is a volunteer kitchen, a snack kitchen, a warming kitchen. That's Randolph, which we did with Pat's firm, CTA. The design committee liked that kind of kitchen very much for various reasons. But topics of discussion. Topic of discussion. This is a traditional multi-purpose room. It's long. There's a dividing wall in the middle of it, makes 2,000 square foot rooms. But those are somewhat changing now, and at ReCal we have the opportunity to create maybe a higher ceiling like the next slide, which has higher ceilings, vaulted ceilings, a different feeling, or next slide, Mansfield is doing reclaimed wood, so they are recycling. But again, a higher ceiling and getting away from that model of your traditional hotel multi-purpose room kind of feeling. And then next is Andover. Their multi-purpose room doesn't look like any senior center you've gone to. It's got theater lights, got stage, has storage so you can have wrestling in it. It's really an all ages, all use type of multi-purpose room. Those are the things that we need to think about in the design phase here. The gym, I keep running into seniors saying, well, we're not going to use the gym. That guy there doesn't think of himself as elderly, but that is a senior citizen using the gym for pickleball. Above the gym, we'll have a walking track used by everybody. And again, you see the gym steel that's in a wood building. It abuts at a very clear line, so it's a very simple expansion joint. The track's the most popular place in the building for sure. Now, I said cost is going to be an issue. It always is. We've done a lot of the gyms as these pre-engineered buildings. You gussy it up with some wall panels, but you can save a lot of money doing a simple portal frame structure. I'm anxious to talk to Pat because this does offer you economics, but it creates some contractual issues for the general contractor. So it's something to consider, but this is another really great cost issue. You can take a standard program room, 1,000 square feet. We put a special floor in it. It has a giving floor. It's a flex floor. So now you can have a arts and crafts program. You move the tables out. You can have chair yoga. You can have Zumba. You can have many programs in one room that typically was just of one function. I think we've sort of ruled this out, but we talked about whether Reading wanted physical fitness equipment or whether we'd have more open rooms with different types of physical activities. I think the option is probably not to have too much physical fitness. There may be even when we don't have any, like Situate has 3 pieces of exercise equipment for special therapy uses. The problem with this is that you need to hire another person to manage that room, so it impacts your staffing and your costing. Small rooms, in addition to that larger program room. Next. What is an arts and crafts room in 2025? Is it your traditional arts and crafts room, or is it a makerspace with digital arts and crafts in addition to analog arts and crafts? But maybe people want to start thinking about those spaces in a different way, and we need to sort of discover that, because as you pointed out, this is a 50 to 70 year building. We don't want to be obsolete in 5 years. And last, gaming is a big part of it. Cards, mahjong, hugely popular, rambunctious, exciting, creates a lot of energy. Pool gets the guys into the building. Poker in the back corner, another great opportunity. What we find is you have to put that separate, because the noise of that really can be problematic. One thing we talked about yesterday is we can take the nurse's station. If we put all the things that look like a nurse in a closet, that nurse's office can become a flex office, because the nurse is only there 1 or 2 days a week. The other 3 days, that office could be used for a visiting accountant, a visiting lawyer, a wills specialist, any type of other use. You get that scale, you get the blood pressure machine, you get the sink, the refrigerator, all that in a separate room. For a small storage space, you can double up the use of your rooms. So we're looking to really optimize the program, because I know that cost is going to be an issue. Our plans show individual use toilets, single user toilets, but that's the conversation we can have. Do you want gang toilets like this or not? And then outdoor space is another consideration. So we're going through those with the design group, and that led to the current design drawings. Next. So right now, the white is the 30,000 square foot building footprint on 2 levels. The gym is on 1 level with the track on the 2nd floor. The reason I said the building wants to be 2 levels is once you have the track on the 2nd floor of the gym, you have to have an elevator getting to the track. You have to have 2 stairs to get off of the track. You might as well build the rest of the building on your 2nd floor, because you already have your elevator, your stairs, and your infrastructure for a 2-story building. 2-story buildings are inherently more effective. They have less foundation. They have less roof area. They're more efficient from an energy perspective. We have a 93-car parking lot. The pickleball area is up on the upper right of the screen. There's an additional 16-car parking lot for the pickleball area that is designed so that pickleball is not dominating the Recal parking lots. We're working with Activitas on the site plan of Recal. They'll have a drawing for us by the end of the week, next stage design drawing. And this is the state of the design. If I can go to the next slide, maybe. The design is really much like that first slide I showed you, a sandwich. The red line demarks the side where there's program spaces on the lower side of the building that are senior and recreation uses for programs, for offices, the lounge, things that at the middle of the night when people are coming in to play basketball at 9 or 10 or 11 at night, or they want to use a track at 5 in the morning before they go to work, you can go to the upper side of the line and use the full gym. You have your own restrooms. You could have a town meeting using the multi-purpose room, and the seniors and the rec staff don't have to worry about people walking through the rest of the building. It's really nicely cordoned off between the 2 uses, which doesn't mean you can't use a program room off hours. It just means that we can really control access through the building. If I can go back 1 slide. there's the gym, and you can see the gym just comes down as a straight line, so we can have a nice clean break between the gym structure and the structure for the rest of the building. 2,400 square foot room, it's a multipurpose room opposite the gym. That'll have big doors, so if you want to have a town meeting, you can have it in the gym. You can have refreshments, you can have whatever in the multipurpose room. You can have polling in the gym. You can have your registration in the multipurpose room. You can come through the gym. There's purposely a door on the top side, so polling can come in one door, go out the other door, polling for votes, is what I mean, voting station. So you're getting a room that can be pickleball, basketball, walking track, lecture room, Zumba room, dance room, kids play area, town meeting room, voting station. It's a hugely multiple use room, and it has its own bathrooms. It's backed up by the multipurpose room, which those two are really synergistic. If you think about a weekend basketball game for running recreation, they can have concessions working out of the kitchen. They can have concessions set up in the multipurpose room if they want. There's lots of great opportunities that communities use out of these relationships. So the roof plan is just there for you to see. There's areas on the roof for those systems that were talked about. I think for the cost estimate, we're having to go pretty quickly, and I think a lot of what Dan talked about is going to be studied in design development, because we just don't have time to get through all that in the time that's allotted to get to the cost estimators. I think the basic system is going to be priced on a VRF air-to-air heat exchange system, heat pump system. And I say that because we've gone through this analysis a lot, and we sort of have to make a quick decision. It doesn't mean that that decision can't change in the future, but that gives you, this room is sort of hot right now.
A little bit.
That room could be on air conditioning, this could be on super air conditioning, that room could be on heating, this could be on cooling. You could have this on heating for seniors for 2 hours, and then another group comes in and it immediately goes into cooling. The beauty of a VRF is that it's designed for this type of building. Total flexibility, total optimization of being able to adapt that environment to whoever's in that room at any time. And I go into recreation buildings and there'll be someone at the front desk in a t-shirt without sleeves, incredibly hot, and then there's another person in the next room in a jacket and a parka, and not everybody has the same temperature, and these VRF systems are just really successful in our community centers for solving that, and they're really pretty easy to operate. So we sort of, next, this just shows that roof line. We have 3 sort of volumes to break up the building, with a flat roof in the middle where rooftop equipment can go. Rooftop equipment needs air to have a heat exchange system working. Next. These are sections through the building, sort of showing how the building's a little bit asymmetrical because the gym is a tall space, and if you designed it a total symmetrical pitched roofs, you'd have more volume in the building than is needed. So we have this sort of slightly asymmetrical roof truss that the architects will recognize as we go through the design. Elevations, very simple materials. We're looking at siding that looks like clapboard and shingles. It's made out of cement fiber, so it has a much higher level of durability. But it gives you a way of identifying to the right the multipurpose room and the gym versus the program spaces on the left. So as you come in, there's a signal about where you're going. And this next one just shows a rendering of that idea. Very preliminary. We had a couple days to work on this. So just trying to show folks how the design can develop. The end of the building looks into the wetlands, so we put the lounge the game room and that, the spaces that can most take advantage of the nice views into the forested area of the site. Next thing we'll be doing is what's the vision for the interior design. Next, we'll be creating with the interior design group the special rooms that want to have some character, like the billiard room, the game room, the lounge. Those don't want to be generic. The program rooms can be very simple and very generic, but how do we make the building feel like it belongs to Reading, that it's part of the environment, and that it's fun to go to, and you don't feel like you're at a CVS or a generic kind of space.
Character.
And then we can just click through these. We had very simple sketches to show the design committee the different scale of rooms, the lounge. I did want to get to this because we're a little concerned about not working against a budget. And what I don't want to do is just design and pick everything, go to town meeting and say, here's the number, and then people are not prepared for that size of number. We're also, as we present this, there's construction costs is on the left side, and on the right side are all the other costs. Next slide. We did an analysis in the feasibility study, and we updated it. For every dollar of building cost you spend, there's 30 cents of other costs that go into the project for furniture, audiovisual, etc. Every number we're presenting is always that total cost. So when people say, oh, it's so expensive, they have to remember it's 30% more than what you're used to expressing as a construction cost. Next. And then what we'd like to do for the next sections is express that cost as a value for the taxpayers. What I'm getting to with this pie chart is that when we get the number in, the previous number was $22 million for construction, $28 million total project cost. Someone says, well, if you save 10%, can you save 10%? Well, you go back to that cost to the taxpayer, saving 10% doesn't noticeably impact your tax bill. It's $6, $7 a year on that kind of savings. So we really have to think about the impact of savings. You also have to think about, if I take 10% out of a building, I can't take 10% out of that site work. Site work is 16% of the cost of construction. It's going to be the same whether it's a 30,000 square feet or a 27,000 square foot building. Same problem happens with your mechanical systems. As we reduce the building size, you can only get about 60 to 65% cost savings for every square foot you take out, which means that people focus all of their energy on interior finishes, which is one of the smallest pieces of pie that we have to work with. So I'm just getting on my podium of saying it's really important to talk about the dollars and have a budget and work to what we think is the right budget that voters can afford and voters will support, so that we can get a project out of this exercise. So that, I think we can skip the next two slides.
Thank you, Joel. So yeah, you really covered a lot. One of the things that I wanted to just comment on is with the programming, the earlier programming was done, but I also wanted to just to let the committee know that within the town, the different user groups, so veteran services, elderly, recreation, are also getting together to look at what we have and kind of fine tune that. So there was one meeting for that already, and there's another one I think scheduled tomorrow. So really looking at how this space is going to be used, who's going to be using it, what are they going to be doing, where are they going to be in the space, how are they going to be using the space, because that information will ultimately yield to the design.
What groups? Who are you meeting
Staff.
with? Or who did you meet with, and who will you meet with?
So the people that will be running the facility, which is elderly services, recreation, and veterans.
And who are you going to meet with tomorrow?
Those. So, yeah, it's a town meeting.
Yeah, a staff meeting.
Staff meeting with those departments. So those are going to be the ones,
So they're gonna meet twice.
Well,
You've
one,
already met with them.
well, one was more of the design, which was, I think yesterday. Was that yesterday?
Yeah, we have so many meetings.
And then tomorrow is more operations. So less on design and more of the operations and how we see ourselves moving forward collectively with what times it would be programmed for certain things and getting on the same page as, with our staff operations and how we're going to function as a team. And then we'll go and visit, bring the COA in and bring in the design group and kind of give them an update on what the staff's viewpoint is. Jane, you?
Yeah.
Add to that?
No, I think that's well stated, Jenna. And so we can map sort of what our operational approach is right now to new spaces in the building, the proposed spaces that Joel laid out. And then you can see what's still available for programming space, so it really kind of shows the advantage.
Yeah, but those aren't, the spaces that you showed us are not necessarily the spaces.
No, they were examples. We were asked to show examples, but
And move things,
well,
and enlarge things.
we're showing you a plan which we're suggesting it are the spaces, and we'll make pictures of what those spaces look like for the next phase. But the floor plan we're saying is getting pretty fixed because we need to get to the cost estimator and get that engineered.
I understand that, but I think the Council on Aging has an issue with that, and more time needs to be spent on looking at room layout, and making sure that the room layout is conducive to building a good senior center environment. Right now, I don't know if that's, I
Yeah,
don't
so-
know if that's it.
What I would say is, I understand Joel's concern and, getting through that and getting the costs because, people are voting on what the building is, how it's going to be used, but a lot of it seems to weigh on the cost that people are going to be paying. That's what they're going to be checking the box on. So they need to know, they need to have a good understanding of what the cost is, and as Joel mentioned, we need to make sure that those costs are in alignment with what the town wants to support. So I find it's very helpful that we have something to discuss, we have a floor plan to review, to comment on, but even though,
And to change.
yes, even though it would be nice if it was final, we're not quite there yet. We've had one meeting so far with the design group. We're now having these meetings with the town department, and there will still be information coming. And as we stated before, we have this timeline for the project that we believe is doable. If going through it, we realize that we need to spend more time on something, then from what I've understood from the committee, that's what we're going to do.
But we're not mutually, we should meet with the Council on Aging and we should meet with the Recreation
Yes,
Commission. There's no
yes,
question
yes.
about it. We just need to get that into the
Right.
scheduling queue.
Yeah, we need
It's
to
never
do
been
that
anticipated that
sooner
that would
rather
happen.
Right, and I think the intention was that the staff who's gonna be operating the building, who really does know best day to day, like Chris and his staff, Jim and his staff, Will and the people that he services, the veterans he services, he even gave a lot of great feedback in the staff meeting yesterday. So I think having those conversations with just the staff and the architects and the project managers in advance is so helpful. And then bringing it to the Council on Aging and Recreation after to say, hey, this is what the staff thinks, who's there every day and speaks with the seniors, speaks with the other members of our community, our veterans, our young families. This is what we think is gonna work and here's why. And we can all speak to that. And then obviously get that weigh-in and buy-in from the Council on Aging and the Recreation Committee. And I think we're very close to having something done. I think we could probably
I mean,
agree as
back to
staff
the
in the next
project
couple
timeline.
Can I
weeks.
just say something, Jenna?
Yeah.
I understand that.
Sure.
But at the same time, you need to meet with, there does need to be that meeting with the Council on Aging. I mean, the layout that's up there is a layout we saw last spring. So that hasn't changed from spring to now.
Well, the general layout has, but the rooms are different than.
Well, I know, so we need to talk about that.
Yeah, and there are also members of the Council on Aging on the design committee too. So there was Marilyn and Jean that were in the last meeting, I believe, and they'll continue to go to those meetings. So, and then Nancy, you're on the.
Yeah, and I'm not arguing with you.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that you need more voices in this conversation. And
Sure.
in order for this building to be conducive for a senior center, we need to work a little bit on that design. And I, for one, Council on Aging, it wouldn't bother me to have the staff in our conversation. In fact, I think that would be very helpful. So after you meet, if you want to then meet with the Council on Aging members.
Yep.
And
I think that was the intention of it, was
But
that the
it
staff would
just
meet and then
sounds
go
like
to
it's
Council
gotta
on
be-
Aging and Recreation.
It just sounds like it's got to be sooner rather than later. So if you're meeting tomorrow, it sounds like we need to meet on Friday.
So,
I mean, we're moving at the speed of light here.
To your point, Nancy, you were hoping to finish the layout right by this month, the end of this month.
I mean, meeting Friday would be fine.
Yeah.
Could I make a comment on efficiency? I don't think our ideas are that drastic that it would set us back if we entertained them now.
Yeah.
Whereas if we don't get to it until let's see if we can get us to buy in a few weeks from now, we've missed the boat.
Exactly.
And I think we have pretty clear thoughts together on us, and tomorrow the design committee will be getting a rather lengthy memo I've been working on for a couple of days of questions I have by room and suggestions about the concepts that I think Nancy's talking about. I've got it drafted, I just didn't have time to get it out this afternoon, but that they need to be thought about now while we're designing it, not down the road where it's, oh, do you think you could accommodate it? We're not people who aren't also very familiar with senior centers, haven't been out to the senior centers, haven't used the senior centers. I mean, the Council on Aging is meant to be an advisory board to Elder and Human Services, and we'd like to be able to perform our function sooner. So it
Right,
doesn't
so
waste time and
I
money
guess
from
I
now.
have to say, I'm a little confused, I guess, because I think, I mean, the Council on Aging was involved during the earlier programming stages, right, with Recalc?
Can I just, where we ended was in May, when all that stuff with the select board, and so we ended in May. So we ended
Yeah.
at those pictures
Okay.
that you're showing, Joel, and they may have changed a little bit with square footage, but I do remember last spring, we were told, those are just placeholders.
Yes.
We still have work to do
Yes.
with what the room layouts would look like.
I think
So
that-
that's what we've been waiting for.
But why wouldn't we meet with them and get that? I think the beauty of the process right now is that it feels like a machine that's very well oiled. I get from Jane a vision statement right when we're doing the program. I mean, it's like, it never happens.
No, that was Marilyn and Nancy and I. That was like kismet. We signed it up and sent it to you, and you're like, here it is. It's in the presentation for this afternoon.
The communications is like working, bringing in the Recreation Commission and the Council on Aging only adds to that synergy that's, I think, very exciting about the project. And you don't get this energy level on projects. The beauty of that energy level is it makes for the better project because people can focus on it for a short amount of time, get what you want, and it's not like it. we lost our momentum between May and October. We got it back. I just think let's not worry about if we have to, let's get their input.
Right, right. No, absolutely. So, and I mean, the way I see it now is we have a few different channels for that right now. We have the working group, the Design Stakeholders Working Group, which has members of the Council on Aging. We have the Permanent Building Committee meeting, which also has members from that. We have the ability for communications to be sent to either those working groups or the design team at any time through emails. And we are working through understanding the current operational dynamics between these three groups and how those are going to roll into one facility. And then with that, being able to take it to kind of that next level and bring it back and say, okay, here's what we have now, let's have more feedback. So I think we have that, unless I'm missing something, so.
So we need to meet on Friday.
Who do you want from the Council on Aging? Because
well,
you'll have to
it would-
call a meeting, right? You'll have to post it
Well, yeah, we might.
tomorrow. Yeah.
But it would be Marilyn, Jean, myself, and there's probably a couple other people within the Council on Aging that would be interested in this. So there might be 4 or 5 of us that, that would like to be part of that discussion, that have experience with other senior centers and did do some of that initial going out and looking
Well, how long do you have to post a meeting?
48 hours.
She'd
I can
have to do it tomorrow morning. Tomorrow morning.
I can do it.
Just, yeah,
Can I just ask a question? If you wait a week, how much is that delaying?
it's Christmas time.
Other than Christmas time?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that anybody wants to meet on the 19th.
Could I ask another question?
I don't know, it's just that the 19th, we have, if we met this Friday, we'd have next week to work on it.
But I know, but it just seems like everybody's rushing this really,
Right,
really,
Yeah,
really.
I
really
agree with that.
fast.
Why are we rushing?
Because you have to,
I know that there's a date, but
2 weeks left in.
But
The
here's
group
my-
is
here's my
trying to
look-
get
here's my look. I understand. So
Yeah.
you're trying to get to the cost estimate.
well,
So-
I'm trying to get to town meeting, and
Understood.
you work your schedule backwards, which he did, this is where we're at.
I get that.
Yeah.
I get that, okay? So what I'm saying is, any of these changes that they make, how much is that actually gonna make to the cost of the building? How much difference?
I don't know that it makes a huge
Yeah,
cost.
it's a-
Psychologically, I think it's a big mistake. You want to generate people that are supportive of the project. They want to have their input. It's better to get their input now than to have them
I'm
be
not saying not-
complaining.
I'm not saying not have the input.
I know, but if they don't want to wait a week to do that.
I mean, we'll wait a week if it goes with your schedule, but what I'm hearing
It
is
doesn't-
that you are doing this, you're doing the project.
I'm just going to be
planning.
another week into the project.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, if you have some ideas, it would be better to hear them sooner, because if there's a major change, we would like to.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And
Yeah.
Marilyn, you said you were going to send an email.
Yeah, I've got
Right.
it ready. I went through a room by room where I
And-
raised questions, and I also
Yeah.
had some general
And
philosophical
that's also the
suggestions.
purpose of this meeting, is to
Yeah.
get feedback
Yeah.
through the building committee. And we also have a forum for next Tuesday, which is also to get feedback. So I don't think it's a problem to schedule a meeting at all.
Yeah.
But there are avenues right now for that information to flow. Any,
This is different kind of information.
And I think that
It's not audience participation information. It's not general information. It's very specific information about what the inside of this building would look like.
And I think that the other issue is,
Volunteer staff. We're appointed to 3-year terms by the select board to be an advisory committee. We're not just this outside random group of volunteers. We are a kind of staff to the town, not to community service.
but
If it's okay with
And we're
everyone, we
meant
could
to work
post it
together.
quickly tomorrow morning. They can meet Friday morning at the PSC. We can get you information by Friday afternoon, and then we can keep the ball rolling.
Okay.
Yeah.
and I think then you
also,
have
too,
that
we're gonna
information
post-
before the public forum. We don't want to go to the public forum and
Right.
the
You can have
COA
that
says, I haven't seen the project.
built in.
Right, and we're gonna post recreation and the council on aging and the permanent building committee at the public forum, so that was my intention, was that these groups would attend the public forum and have the opportunity to see it, see the community feedback, and then have that follow-up meeting with the council on aging and the recreation committee after that meeting.
Right.
So there was no ill will on behalf of staff or anything, or to keep information away, because we were going to solicit that feedback from the recreation committee and the council on aging. Jim, Chris, and I all talked about that on Monday. So, we thought that we were moving pretty well.
We have some real concerns.
Yes.
With the way the building is currently laid out for a senior center. So meeting on Friday would be great.
Yeah, it sounds like, I mean, if, well, not if, you know, you're stating you have very specific information that can help improve the design or impact the design. So the sooner the better to get that information, if that information is there. So you're gonna schedule a meeting?
Yeah.
Okay. But I would encourage, like, as we go through this, keep that communications channel open, whether it's through email or through the working group that meets every other week.
Right.
Like, we want to keep it flowing, because it feels like a little bit, there was some, you know, we have a bunch of information, hasn't been released yet, so it's fine, we'll get that meeting, get all that information out, but let's just make sure it keeps flowing so that, you know, we have the most up-to-date feedback, because that's important as we move through this. So, okay, so we'll schedule that for that. So,
Wait, Joel, you were gonna say something and you kind of got into it.
No, I'm fine.
You're okay. All right.
Oh, sorry, Joel, that was me. It's the Italian.
No, I interrupted you, I'm sorry.
And I interrupted both of you.
Hey, you
And I'm
know,
howling on the
we're all
side.
friends here, it's all right.
so, you know, we had some discussion about this, but we haven't really talked too much about the design. And I think now with the time, I'm not sure that we have too much time to dig into that at this point. But I would like to at least open it up for some feedback, some questions. We can go into, you know, some of the more details that you have for the COA on Friday. But at this point, just for the purpose or for the benefit of the whole committee to hear some feedback on these design concepts, I think will be valuable. And I would also just like to clarify some things that have been discussed in this meeting related to design, but also kind of touching back on sustainability. And it seemed that there is interest for doing a wood and steel building. So that seems to be supported by this group at this point. And then also Joel mentioned using a VRF system, which is electric. Or you mentioned that the town has very low electric costs.
Yeah, so this is probably worth some sort of follow-up. VRF is great. It's the most obvious first choice for a building like this, for sure. It doesn't, its lifespan is a little bit shorter than the type of systems that the town staff is probably used to seeing in its buildings. That's my only strike against VRF, that and the amount of refrigerant it contains. The 410A thing, by the way, is not an issue. There's a replacement refrigerant already in these systems. So I agree I agree with it being the right starting point that we should evaluate against. VRF conceptually is also very easy to, and the other option, one of the other options in this chart was a geothermal version of VRF. So it's actually quite, from a conceptual standpoint, it's not too, in my opinion, not a huge shift if it wants to go that direction. I don't know if, I should have asked before, is there an engineer on the project?
No. Allied
Who's there?
Engineering. Allied, who's,
Okay.
they're big in geothermal and heat pumps.
Cool. Okay, so yeah, anyway, I didn't mean to make this a long statement, but I think it's a good starting point, and I think there's conversations about maintenance, definitely pro on the all electric. It is the easiest way to go all electric because it solves all of the low temperature issues and all this stuff. You don't need supplemental systems. It's quite easy to integrate architecturally, et cetera, so all good things.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that. It's good to give some direction to the design team. You know, we're not talking about gas boilers and things like that. So, you know, we can always deviate a little bit if we go to geothermal later on, but for where we are now, it seems like that's the direction to go to.
Can I ask, are there showers, or there isn't really like a locker room facility, is there?
There's not a locker room. It's a question, if we would like to have at least one shower or two, because then you can, with the kitchen and a generator, you have an emergency shelter.
Right, okay, but the intent is not,
There's
I'm
no
asking
locker
because
room.
of
There's
the
no big
use
locker
of
room
water,
space.
right, yeah,
No,
okay.
the kitchen uses some water but we can use a heat pump water heater for the kitchen.
Or even an electric water heater is not a huge deal, it's not all I use.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
And cooking as well, all electric.
That's a discussion.
How long do you have to boil water?
2 seconds.
Faster than gas.
Faster than gas.
Yeah, the induction
Oh,
is.
the induction, yeah, the
Is
induction.
the
yes.
way to go.
It would be.
I don't have an induction, so I gotta get on that.
You'll be converted when you
You'll
try
be
it,
converted, it's better than
but,
gas.
bringing a gas line to the building just to power one piece of equipment.
Yeah,
Silly.
I think Dan is doing induction, and Newton and Sudbury, we did have one line of gas coming just for the kitchen.
Well, what about the generator?
Generator is not gassed. Well, it could be
Generators on
could be
diesel for backup.
Generator has to be
But we have looked at battery backup, but that thing looks like a truck or a semi-truck. There's also connections where the standby generator, they can pull up and connect to supplement the system. So there were options that were studied at NewCal.
You can have a permanent, or you can call Taylor Rental when you need one. We'd prefer having a permanent generator.
Okay.
There's an interesting conversation there, though, because presumably the school, Killam's going to have pretty significant resilience factors for emergency shelter. So I agree it's a great feature, but it's probably not the only, it's a block away from a much larger, probably resilience
I think that,
structure.
well, in other communities, the fire chiefs want us to stay out of the schools for that, because it could be that the school goes back in session, but you still need an emergency shelter. So let me give you an example. Andover, the senior center was used for 3 months while they didn't have any gas in the community. But the schools were open, but residents would go to the senior center and get breakfast, take a shower, go to work. Which they couldn't do at home.
I'm definitely in favor of a permanent generator. I just wanted to suggest that there's also the school.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So these are all design-related issues. Other questions or comments about the design information that was shared so far, or ideas that are important for this project for the town?
So I have a question, actually. It has to do with the pickleball courts. Are they part of the project?
They're part of the master plan. Jane can mention, I think they're funded out of a different source, but we're looking at it so that the stormwater and the electrical, all of the infrastructure things coordinate between the two.
So when you present this on Tuesday, are you guys going to mention that? Because I don't want people to think that, you're putting this in and you're doing pickleball courts. Are they mutually exclusive, or do they have to happen together?
They do not have to happen together, no. They've been separated, and there's a separate contract. It's also with the same architect, the same engineers, it's all the same high level, understanding how the site works all together and so forth. But the pickleball portion has been separated out. There is private funding for that. There's some operational funding for that through the recreation budget. And then depending on what the design shows, depends on how much can be built and so forth. And that will be brought to town meeting separately.
So the pickleball courts would happen regardless of,
Whatever the pleasure of town meeting is.
I'm just saying, assuming.
Correct.
Yeah.
They could be independent.
But I guess that's my question, when you have the town forum on Tuesday, is that gonna get mentioned? Because nobody, at least I never heard that spoken until I asked the question, I guess.
Oh, yeah, we can mention that, for sure.
Because you don't want people to think that, they're
Correct.
tied together or.
Nope, we want to be completely, yeah, that was something that the pickleball community brought forward to town staff a few months ago. And we went to the select board to talk about how that would look and so forth. And their appetite for that.
Yeah. Is there information though about the total cost of the pickleball project?
No, we just used ARPA funds to secure the design work, so we don't have that now. We will have it in time for town meeting if we're bringing it forward in town meeting in the spring.
Because that's another cost that's gonna go against the.
Well,
Not against,
Part of the
but-
thought is that because
Yes and
there's private funding that has been secured for this by the pickleball community through fundraising and through gifts, that is substantive to the cost.
It's not enough.
Well, we don't know the total cost yet. So we have an understanding. We think it's going to be, they have raised money. They are now going to continue to raise money because there's been a commitment to designate that land for pickleball, again, at the pleasure of town meeting. But our feeling is because this project will be a debt exclusion, that we don't need to put gifted money with excluded dollars toward one part of a project. Does that, do you see that, that's some of the logic there, is that if we're doing the excluded debt on the whole site, but there's this gifted private piece, we want to kind of pull that a little bit aside, and we have some operational funds also that would come from recreation.
Well, so operational funds, I mean, that might be something that people ask.
Yeah, no, and they should. So
And it's capital, it's capital.
It's on the capital.
Capital money allotted to actually, technically the DPW, because they oversee the engineering piece of it, but Jim is highly involved in that piece too, so recreation gets a certain amount of funds every year to allocate to parks, playgrounds, and fields, and the town can use whatever they decide needs to be done in a given year and slate it to that project. And we think if pickleball is approved at town meeting, that those funds would go toward that project.
Part of the project
Yeah.
mix.
If pickleball is not part of our project, my opinion is, let's try as hard as possible to not make it seem like it's part of this conversation.
Yeah.
Sure.
That's kind of
Well, I
what I
think
was
it's-
getting at.
Yeah.
Don't show it on the screen.
Or show it.
Don't talk about
Well, people are
pickleball.
talking about
People
it.
love it.
Yeah, I mean,
But
pickleball is.
it's such a
part of
big
it.
issue that
I know.
it will influence how people feel about the building project.
And I know that it already has.
Yeah, I agree, but I also think that it is part of the collective master plan, as Joel said. So we wanted pickleball courts
Yeah, I
as
think-
part of ReCal because it's serving a lot of our senior
It
community.
was a big part of
That's
the
who used it.
feasibility findings.
No,
Right.
I mean,
Well,
personal things, my
So
my
it
personal opinion
adds to
aside,
the
I just worry
project.
that everyone has a personal opinion on it, and that it'll be so hard to not talk about if it's, I just.
I agree with Aaron. Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I think it has to be talked about, but it can be talked about as private dollars.
Right. Yes.
And I think it's a draw.
It's a mix of public-private
Yeah.
dollars. It's
Yes,
not just
right.
privately funded.
Right, but
just
that's
so we're
it.
clear. But yeah.
But it's separate from the project, but
Separate.
it's gonna
It's
be in that
separate.
location.
Yes, it is.
Right.
Financing
Separate
is
from that
separate.
project.
That's the important
Well,
one.
That is
And
correct.
it's the same
That's what I was
engineering and the
asking.
Fair
same.
question.
Does one
Yeah.
go and does
Yeah.
both
It's a great
go, or
question.
Does nothing go, right? So,
Nope,
Right.
it's a germane question. We need to be careful and transparent about how we talk about it.
Okay, so maybe at least at minimum suggestion is that if we show rendering of the site, pickleball is in halftone, not in scope, something like that. Make it so clear that we're not,
future.
it's not part of this
It's
project.
not.
something.
Right, if the pickleball fails, it's not part of this override project.
Right.
Is that what you're saying?
Right.
Or
So
vice versa.
it was, I
Right.
believe, included in the original cost estimate for this project. Is
No,
that-
it was as an alternate.
it
Yeah.
was not. That's what
Yeah,
it was.
because it couldn't be fit at each of the sites.
Yeah.
Right, because it didn't, other 3 sites that were being considered at the time.
Right, so-
Yeah, I think that that's fair, and then as we present pickleball, same idea.
Yeah, and
For the
that's not
retail.
this, like, you could have a slide or whatever, I don't know what the format, say pickleball, because everyone's gonna, it's gonna get asked, right? But you can then explain it's not part of this project. There's an efficiency of putting it in the same place, obviously, so there's a savings compared to putting pickleball somewhere else. And it's got private funding. I just wanted to be abundantly clear that we're discussing the building
Yeah.
and not pickleball.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, it's great.
And there's other part, it's the building and the site, right? The site is also part of how many parking spots and where
Yeah.
things go, and if there's walking trails. Those are all still aspects of the recal project. The pickleball portion is connected, right? Because there will be parking, there will be, that shared path goes by that, there will be site improvements that happen there that have to be part of, are we bringing power to that section of parking lot? All of those things. That's why we wanted to make sure that we had Joel and his team working with Activitas doing the same work, because it would be foolish to replicate soil samples and borings and all of that, right? So we're not wasting money either.
Well, so that's an interesting question,
Yeah.
right? If the pickleball courts are lit, right, is that coming off of our building's electrical gear? Like, is it part of our building?
No, because the pickleball would, even if it was funded, it would be built way before the recal, so you
So
have, it's gonna have its own transformer and.
Okay. So we can actually
service.
separate it from
Yeah,
the site?
it'll be separated.
Okay.
So it's completely separated, but it's a point well taken.
Yeah. It's good.
So we'll update that on the site plans to show a boundary of
There's a new
what's.
site plan being created by
Okay.
Activitas right now.
Okay. Carol?
And I think I defer to Nancy as to whether we just defer this completely to Friday's meeting, but I'm concerned that you're having tomorrow's meeting without our even having raised it.
I would say if we can meet on Friday,
All right, but it's a full hour, it's at
and
least
anybody
discussion.
who wants to come,
Concerns.
No, I can't go on Friday.
Jenna's not available then on Friday.
No.
And is
I
there
would
any
like to
reason-
be there,
Is
but
there any reason not to be joining with Elder Services discussion?
Can I just want to make a statement that I think for this building to really work, you need to have the people who are running the building be invested in how it works. Because they're the ones that are doing the programming, they're doing all of the separations, they're doing all the connections. The kinds of things they're talking about, I would imagine, is all operational. How is Veteran Services going to come in, or when are they going to be there? When is recreation going to be there? What kind of programs are they going to be offering? How does that interrelate? Has really nothing to do with I mean, it has a lot to do with how this building gets designed. Because if it doesn't work for the people who are actually running it, it's never going to work.
Yeah.
So it's critical that they get in here first.
Sure.
And then I think you can fold in whatever your comments are for the programs that you hope to see. They can fold it into what their operational parts are.
It's more user experience than it's programs, I would say. And we-
So what types of things are you talking about, just so I can better understand?
From my perspective, what we have now is a true senior hub. It's small, it's inadequate, but it's got full range of services, and when you walk in, you know you're in a senior center, you know you're in an environment that's seniors, everything is there that's saying it. This building will have two things. It'll have rec stuff, but what I don't yet see, and I don't know what went in your earlier meeting because we weren't invited, so maybe you've addressed some of this, we have no way of knowing because we're splitting this. I mean, we didn't have a lounge for seniors, we didn't have staff space for seniors, we don't have hallways that on the drawing look like they're ideal for mobility issues. I could be wrong, but you can't tell from the drawing. I don't have that sense of, this is a building designed, this end of the building, this part of the building is designed to support specific needs of seniors. And it's a user experience question. It's not that, oh, you forgot we need a program on Yahtzee or whatever. I just don't see why we're separating them, and I see that time will be wasted if we don't talk until late. And Friday can help, but it's not a short conversation.
Yeah, but
so Joel just explained
Why don't
that
we
this
just
is the
let him-
lounge in the back of the room, and he put it
And it's
in a place that overlooks the
500
wetland.
square feet, which is
So
really
I-
small
I-
and has no cafe.
So I think
It's
if we
not
have a
adequate.
meeting on Friday,
Yeah.
you're more than welcome to come, Brian.
Yes,
And anybody else who wants to come
yeah.
is more than welcome to come. And we'll
Explain.
provide the details. I mean, the ambiance of the building is very important.
Yes.
It can't be just a recreation. And Jen, I don't mean that like just a recreation center. We don't want it to be
Exclusively recreation.
where you walk in and you feel like you're in a school or you're at the Y. That's not the kind of building that we're trying to build for the seniors. They have, the seniors who attend have very specific and needs. I mean, loneliness, the ability to socially interact, the ability to physically get around easily. There's a bunch of those things, and right now, it's a room here and a room here and a room here.
Oh, I don't agree with that, but I think that the point is that what you're asking to do is what every project needs. You have to build trust between the user and the architecture design team. And you can't do that unless you have a meeting where you then say, oh yeah, we are hearing what you're saying and we're accommodating it, so we're gonna do it.
Let's give it great. It's gonna be a good meeting.
All right. I didn't make it.
I know, almost 10 minutes, come on.
So I think the last item on the agenda is the approval of meeting minutes.
Correct. So has everybody had a chance to
Yeah,
take a
can I
look at
just,
them?
we got the geotechnical report today, the committee did, and it looks like it's a pile foundation job, right?
No, it's it's a structural slab on conventional spread footings, but it's not a pile.
Okay, that's not the impression I got.
No, I know.
I read it through very
The
quickly.
structural engineer, I know what you saw, and I saw it too, and I had the structural engineer look at it because it looked like he wanted piles on it, but it's not a slab on grade, it's a reinforced structural slab going between foundations because you are on the edge of a wetlands and the soil's not great.
Well, you've got to support the slab on grade somehow, even if
It
it's a
goes on to the
structural slab on
foundations,
grade.
yeah, and then the foundations, they said can be conventional. They'll have bigger footings, but they're conventional foundations.
That's not the impression I got from the geotechnical
And
report.
I'll get a report from our structural engineer.
Okay, I will look at that very carefully because I've had experience of those kinds of buildings and a not good experience, where you have a slab which is a slab cast on ground, but which is a structural slab. It spans between discrete foundations, and it's more difficult than you think.
I've done them before, I'm not that much younger than you, so I've been around the track.
You are a lot younger. Yeah.
But, okay, yeah, it's a good comment, so that's something that came to your attention.
The comment is the soil conditions are not the best.
They're not.
And it will cost money, whether it's piles, which I think it's going to be, or it's a raft foundation.
Well, that would be a structural mat that floats. We're not quite there yet. I don't think we want to do a mat foundation or a raft.
Whatever it is, there's money involved, is the point I'm making. It's not the cheapest foundation that we could have had. It's a bad, the soils are bad.
Yeah, and I think
SPT
we hire an engineer of record to do that review and the design, and then we can provide feedback, and if we have other suggestions, we can pass that along.
Yeah, no, I'm just warning people that there is a significant cost to the foundations over and above what you would have expected from the building. I mean,
And if the pickleball courts go up there, that has to be accounted for in those too, because you don't want to just put a pickleball court and then have the settlement. You've seen tennis courts that have that problem.
Yeah,
right?
sure, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we're building in a wetland, basically, or just a little bit off of a wetland.
Exactly what he
Yeah,
was
it's no surprise that
Exactly.
soils are pretty
No
bad.
surprise.
They're,
Yep.
you know, they're alluvial outwash from a glacier.
Yep.
And they're uncompacted. They're, you know, they're soft.
But they're not contaminated and they didn't.
Yes, it could have been worse, but
Could
it's.
have been worse. Good. Okay, has everybody had a chance to read the minutes?
Yeah.
Any changes, questions, comments? If not, can I have a motion? Ray can do that. He can tell us he's still awake.
Move to approve the minutes from, what was the date,
11/13/2024.
11/13,
2024.
2020?
Second.
All right, I'll have to take a roll call vote. So, John Coote,
Yes.
Greg Stepler,
Yes.
Kirk McCormick,
Yes.
Nancy Zimlak. Excuse me. Michael, they're not here, so you could do it, but anyway, Nancy Toomey, yes.
Okay,
Passes.
excellent. So I think that's a wrap. So just as a reminder, we have the public forum next Tuesday. Tours starting at 6 p.m., the forum starting at 7 p.m. at the Pleasant Street Center. And our next scheduled permanent building committee meeting is for January 14th.
And that
And I
would be
believe
at the Pleasant Street Center?
that's my understanding,
At the,
at the Pleasant Street
At
Center.
Pleasant, okay.
What meeting is that?
I'm sorry?
What meeting is at the Pleasant Street Center?
The building committee meeting, permanent, this meeting in January.
good, there'll be lots of space.
Yes,
At 6 p.m.?
Yes.
and not as hot.
Not as hot, probably cold.
Well, thanks,
Okay,
everybody.
yeah, thank you.
Oh, motion to adjourn.
Yeah, motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second? Got one, John Coote seconds. All right, roll call vote. We've got John Coote.
Yes.
Greg Stepler,
Yes.
Kirk McCormick,
Yes.
Nancy Zimlak,
Yeah.
Nancy Toomey, yes. Adjourned.
Thank you.
8:15, 8:16.
You tried.
You tried, you did a good job.
I had asked Jane about it, and I don't know where it ended up landing, but yeah, you can ask her.
These are guests that are not,
I mean, I'm gonna have a conversation, I'm gonna be like, you need to bail,
You did a nice job.
because like saying anything that is remotely negative about saying that we're discriminating against seniors.
Business cards.
Can
we use the town form and the town?
It's 6,000 square feet, and the building should be 1,000.
I mean, it's just,
Oh, okay.
Laura, the town clerk is the arbitrator.
All right, I will ask her tomorrow. Because if not, we'll just print up our own, but I want to get them done.
Just like the design group stick here with you guys, that are, that certain members that aren't involved in the
I
project.
totally understand. Totally understand. Thank you.
Building committee.
Take care, Mary.
10 o'clock.
Friday?
10 o'clock.